Welcome, everyone. You are joining us here because it is going to be the Feast of St. Francis this weekend, and we would like to show you how a group online can do the Feast of St. Francis program for 2020. This is a very special Feast of St. Francis. We decided this year to connect it with the issues of climate change, the whole issues of pandemic and creation care, and thus we ended up focusing it on the Canticle of Creation. And so this whole program, which should in person take about 90 minutes, today we're going to be probably condensing it a little bit, but it'll show you how you can facilitate a program like this on a Zoom call, for example, or you can just follow along and participate with us. To get us started, I'm very, very humbled that they said yes at the first ask immediately. I have some colleagues from the Catholic community that I work with here, and I am going to introduce them. Probably I need to introduce myself. I'm Paz Artaza Regan, and I'm the program manager at Catholic Climate Covenant. Adam, if you would please go next.
Yes, I'm Adam Fitzpatrick. I am the Social Mission Outreach Coordinator for the Center for Mission in St. Paul.
Beth.
My name is Beth Piggush. I am the Integral Ecology Director for the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration based in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
I am Becca Eastwood, and I'm the Advocacy Program Manager with the Columban Center for Advocacy and Outreach. We are the US-based advocacy office for the Columban Fathers and based in Washington, D.C.
My name is Kent Ferris. I'm the Director of Social Action and Catholic Charities for the Diocese of Davenport in Iowa.
Excellent, thank you. And they have agreed to be the participants in this program. I will take the part of the facilitator. So for those of you that are still interested in downloading the entire program, this is where you would find it. There is the facilitator guide. There is the regular program guide for if you have in-group, in-person type of programming, and then there is the online individual program, and we are using that program for this event. And to get us started, we will start with a prayer that I will be the part that says leader, L, and my participants will be all. I do ask the participants to not speak too loudly because sometimes when everybody speaks loud, nobody understands much, but you will be taking that part. So let us gather ourselves, center ourselves, and remember that we are in the presence of God. The breath of the Almighty. Lord God, loving Creator, you fashioned us from day and breathe life into us. We are made and loved by you. The Spirit of God,
has made me, and the breath of the Almighty has given me life.
Heavenly God, your Spirit fills us with hope and lights the path to fullness of life. Hear us, and we cry out to you, uncertain and afraid. The Spirit of God
has made me, and the breath of the Almighty has given me life.
In your mercy, Lord, grant us the strength to rebuild when all seems lost, and the courage to reach out to those in pain. We take from creation more than we need. We threaten your world through indifference and greed.
The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty has given me life.
This section here is an introduction to what we are going to be focusing on, which is the Canticle of Creatures. The Canticle was written in 3 parts, each at a different time of St. Francis's life. Part 1, which is the part that is the appraise to creation, to God for his creations as brother sun, sister moon, brother wind, sister water. This section of the Canticle was written at the end of St. Francis's life in 1224, as he was recovering from an illness with St. Clare and the poor sisters in San Damiano. At this point in his life, St. Francis was almost completely blind, and yet through his suffering, he composed this song of praise of God for all the wonders of creation. Part 2 is a praise for those who forgive for the love of God and who endure trials in peace. This second part of the Canticle was composed when Francis reconciled the bishop and the podesta, which is the chief magistrate of Assisi. He sent his friars to sing the first part of the Canticle in front of them, which led to their reconciliation. Part 3 of the Canticle, a praise for sister bodily death and to those whom death will find in your most holy will. According to tradition, the first time this part of the Canticle was sung in its entirety was by Francis and his brothers Angelo and Leo, 2 of the original companions, on Francis's deathbed. The final verse praising Sister Death was said to have been added only a few minutes before Francis's death. We are now going to go to the video section. As we have looked at some of the history or the kind of like where the Canticle comes from, the video will start unpacking the Canticle itself. And at this point, I will share the video with you.
The Canticle of the Creatures. Most high, all-powerful, all-good Lord, all praise is yours, all glory, honor, and blessings. To you alone, Most High, do they belong. No mortal lips are worthy to pronounce your name. We praise you, Lord, for all your creatures, especially for Brother Sun, who is the day through whom you give us light. And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor. Of you, Most High, he bears your likeness. We praise you, Lord, for Sister Moon and the stars. In the heavens you have made them bright, precious and fair. We praise you, Lord, for Brothers Wind and Air, fair and stormy, all weathers' moods, by which you cherish all that you have made. We praise you, Lord, for Sister Water, so useful, humble, precious and pure. We praise you, Lord, for Brother Fire, through whom you light the night. He is beautiful, playful, robust, and strong. We praise you, Lord, for Sister Earth, who sustains us with her fruits, colored flowers, and herbs. We praise you, Lord, for those who pardon, for love of you bear sickness and trial. Blessed are those who endure in peace. By you, Most High, they will be crowned. We praise you, Lord, for Sister Death, for whom no one living can escape. Woe to those who die in their sins. Blessed are those that she finds doing your will. No second death can do them harm. We praise and bless you, Lord, and give you thanks, and serve you in all humility.
Francis of Assisi wrote the Canticle of the Creatures in Italian, in the Umbrian dialect, and intended it to be sung. When Francis wrote the first section, he was blinded by an eye disease and suffering great physical pain. Thomas of Celano suggests that Francis spent a torturous night tormented by mice and other vermin in a small hut in the yard of San Damiano, where St. Clare lived. When he was greeted in the morning, he responded with this song, praising God through the uniqueness of creation. When you consider the context of the canticle, you realize that its great joy springs from Francis's own encounter with suffering. It is not naive and shallow, but rings with the deep wisdom which is the accumulation of Francis's whole life. One of the key words in the canticle is a small preposition, through. Francis is not singing in thanksgiving for Brother Sun, nor is he singing to Sister Moon. Instead, Francis is praising God through Brother Sun and Sister Moon. Creation itself has the power to praise God. Made in the image of God, all creation reflects the beauty and love of God. Sun and moon praise God just by being themselves. Francis had grown in such sensitivity to the natural world around him that he could even sense creation praising God. We, in our lowliness, reach out to God through the incredible beauty of the sun and moon, wind, fire, and earth. The other unique aspect of Francis's worldview is that all creation is family. Creation is not dumb matter to be used for our own purposes, but as a reflection of God's splendor, we are knit together as brothers and sisters. Pope Francis reminds us of this in his opening words of Laudato Si, the encyclical on care for our common home. In the words of this beautiful canticle, St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. There are many stories about Francis's kindness to animals and plants, and his deep awe for all the elements. The canticle summarizes the arc of Francis's whole life, with the deep awe he feels towards creation and our inherent relatedness. Elio Delio describes how Francis came to find himself related to all creation. The deeper he grew in relationship with Christ, the more he found himself intimately related to the things of creation as brother. We might say that his relationship with Christ changed his internal focus. He developed a deeper consciousness of relatedness and came to realize he was related to all things, no matter how small. Because everything shared in the primordial goodness of God, the source of his own life, Francis discovered that he was part of the cosmic family of creation. Francis's revelation of the relatedness of all creation is reflected in the canticle. This popular song through the ages continues to teach us today. We are not isolated. Creation is not a thing to be used and disposed of. Our role is not to dominate. Instead, we are family. Creation cares for us. We, in turn, are called to care for creation.
Okay. Nope. Okay. Is my slide back up? Do you see my slide that says video? No. See, that's whenever I now try to share my screen, share. See, it's just wanting to show the video. And share main screen. How about now? Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. See, the technology issues. So now that we've watched the video and we've done a little bit of the reading, we have a couple of questions. The one question that we have here are, what images or words stood out for you from the video? Was there anything in the video itself that spoke to you? And the best way to do this, maybe we should look and see how we're alphabetically. Adam, Becca, Beth, Kent, if you want to take turns like that, or just put your hands up.
Okay. I really liked the moon image and the image of the orange-bellied hummingbird. Like those two images really stuck out to me as just moments that I like to be outside. I like to be outside when it's a little cooler, and I like seeing colors in nature.
Anyone else? While you think, one thing that struck me, the videos were done by 3 different groups, different times, and yet all of them do have a bird image. So they were able to bring in what we associate with St. Francis all the time, of St. Francis speaking to the birds. But they also had an incredible reflectiveness in the tone that I was able to really take back and sort of just go with the images and almost prayerful. That's what I really took from it.
I've been a secular Franciscan for almost 30 years, and I've never had anybody emphasize the difference, the distinction between the word through and not for. So I found that very insightful.
And I really enjoyed the visual of the mountaintop where there was a spotlight of light in the distance and the contrast between light and dark. And I thought of the words through, and then I thought of the word family and cosmic family, and how I enjoy nature myself is typically with my family. So it all kind of came together in this video.
Nice. Okay. Keep going. In this part of our program, we once again go into the Canticle. And as I said, we really are focusing on the Canticle with this program. And I must tell you that the reason we're focusing on the Canticle is it really does speak to what we are going through in 2020 with the climate change and ecological issues, with pandemic, and with the political partisanship that we're dealing with. You all have a section that you will be reading. The first section will be read by Rebecca, the second by Adam, then Beth, and then Kent will lead us with the questions. So I will leave you to do these sections and I'll move the slides for you.
Thank you, Paz. The first part of the Canticle of Creatures highlights St. Francis seeing the interconnectedness of all of God's creation. Most high, all-powerful, good Lord, all praise is yours, all glory, all honor, and all blessing. To you alone, most high, do they belong. No mortal lips are worthy to pronounce your name. All praise be yours, my Lord, through all you have made. And first, my Lord, brother, Son, who brings the day, and through whom you give us light. How beautiful is he, how radiant in all his splendor. Of you, most high, he bears the likeness. All praise be yours, my Lord, through sister moon, and the stars. In the heavens you have made them, bright and precious and fair. All praise be yours, my Lord, through brothers wind and air, and fair and stormy, and all the weather's moods, by which you cherish all that you have made. All praise be yours, my Lord, through sister water, so useful, humble, precious, and pure. All praise be yours, my Lord, through brother fire, through whom you brighten up the night. How beautiful is he, how cheerful, full of power and strength. All praise be yours, my Lord, through our sister Mother Earth, who sustains us and governs us, and produces various fruits with colored flowers and herbs.
And at the end of this section, we are to reflect, what do you give praise to or through in creation? And this is not for a discussion, this is more for a personal reflection. Adam and Beth, if you could lead us with the second part of the Canticle, and how the Canticle speaks to our present political partisanship and global pandemic.
All praise be yours, my Lord, through those who grant pardon for love of you, through those who endure sickness and trial. Happy are those who endure in peace. By you, Most High, will they be crowned.
All praise be yours, my Lord, through Sister Death, from whose embrace no mortal can escape. Woe to those who die in mortal sin. Happy though she finds doing your will, the second death can do them no harm. Praise and bless my Lord, and give him thanks, and serve him with great humility.
Thank you. And Kent's going to be the reader of the questions for this section.
So what broken relationships do we need to grant pardon to so as to heal political partisanship?
Well, I know that when I read about St. Francis writing that section to try to heal the rift that was going on in Assisi, and how he told the friars to go and sing to the mayor, the magistrate. I kind of smiled and thought, is that what we need to be doing? Going to the halls of power and trying to sing to be able to heal the rifts that are partisan and that they're so difficult these days. And I thought that perhaps we needed to start more at home, to start modeling the civility and modeling how to discuss these issues with our friends and our family, and hoping that then can be modeled with the larger community.
What can we learn? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add, with this question, it made me think about, in a political partisanship, them versus us. And I think of nature and how they actually are very symbiotic and they work together. And that just resonated for me, thinking about the partisanship that we're seeing these days.
What can we learn about enduring illness and pain from St. Francis?
I think St. Francis had a remarkable insight looking at the importance of cycles of health and sickness, and that it all kind of circles around back, as that there will be periods of health, there will be periods of sickness, but it's all in the grace of God's embrace.
Is giving, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Paz. I think what came with this off of what Adam said is also, where we're at with the pandemic and the cycles and the various levels of illness that different communities are feeling. I think that what St. Francis dealt with and his song of joy after that was really important and a good lesson to learn.
I was thinking about how much stress many of us are under, thinking of our parents or somebody who might be vulnerable, our own health, and that sometimes I get so focused on that and I don't sort of say, okay, I can't control it. I can make it as safe as possible, and I need to leave that stress out. The same way that St. Francis seems to have sort of said, God, I entrust myself to you.
And then finally, how does the Canticle speak to us about seeking healing for creation, our bodies during illness, and our political structures during a time of partisanship?
For the first part of that question, what always strikes me when reflecting on St. Francis is building an individual relationship with all of creation and with, you know, each individual creature, and how incredibly important that is to be able to build a relationship yourself with nature. And once you have that relationship, it really deepens your connection to the world around you, and how important it is to care for it. And so I think that's a really beautiful teaching that I take away from him.
I was always struck when I was reading it from the view of creation, illness, partisanship, how in the 13th century, those same things were happening that are happening in 2020. We're not that unique. And in that time, they didn't have the medical advances we have, the communication, you know, and how that whole idea of Francis's of seeking communion with nature, seeking connection with God, and also seeking more of a peaceful communion with the entire town of Assisi. That if we are to apply those kind of principles that he was doing at a much smaller level, I think it would help us at a larger level now as we live our lives. Anyone else? Okay, we'll keep going. Thank you, Kent, for that. The second part of the readings are taking us now not so much into the canticle itself, but now seeing how other scripture and other readings connect with these same themes. And my colleagues here each will be doing one of the readings. So Becca, you have number 1. Adam, you have number 2. Beth, number 3. And Kent, number 4. So go ahead.
Thanks, Pub. Let us love one another, because love is of God. Everyone who loves is begotten by God and knows God. Whoever is without love does not know God, for God is love. In this way, the love of God was revealed to us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might have life. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son as expiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also must love one another. No one has ever seen God. Yet, if we love one another, God remains in us, and his love is brought to perfection in us.
A prayer that does not lead you to practical action for your brother, the poor, the sick, those in need of help, a brother in difficulty, is a sterile and incomplete prayer. From Pope Francis, Angelus Address, July 21st, 2013. And A Eucharist which does not pass over into the concrete practice of love is intrinsically fragmented. From Pope Benedict XVI, Deus Caritas Est, paragraph 14.
Love overflowing with small gestures of mutual care is also civic and political, and it makes itself felt in every action that seeks to build a better world. Love for society and commitment to the common good are outstanding expressions of a charity which affects not only relationships between individuals, but also macro relationships, social, economic, and political ones. That is why the Church set before the world the idea of a civilization of love. Social love is the key to authentic development. In order to make society more human, more worthy of the human person, love in social life, political, economic, and cultural, must be given renewed value, becoming the constant and highest norm for all activity. In this framework, along with the importance of little everyday gestures, social love moves us to devise larger strategies to halt environmental degradation and to encourage a culture of care which permeates all of society. When we feel that God is calling us to intervene with others in these social dynamics, we should realize that this too is part of our spirituality, which is an exercise of charity and as such matures and sanctifies us. Laudato Si encyclical, line 231.
Many of the saints learned the path to merciful love, but St. Francis of Assisi stands out. In his youth, Francis wanted to be a famous knight, but he was wounded in battle. After he recovered, he started to wander into abandoned churches to pray. Praying before the San Damiano cross, he had a deep personal experience of God's compassionate love. The event that changed his life was his encounter with the leper. As an ambitious youth who sought fame and glory, Francis had a great disdain for lepers, and soon as he saw a leper, he would hold his nose and run away. After he experienced God's merciful love in the San Damiano cross, Francis met a leper along the road. Instead of showing disgust, Francis dismounted his horse, gave the leper alms, and kissed the leper's hand. This experience marked a profound turn of events in his life. By experiencing God's love for him in the crucified Christ, Francis experienced the same goodness of God in the kiss of the leper. Recounting the experience at the end of his life, he wrote, "What was bitter had turned into sweetness of soul and body." Through the cross, he came to a new awareness of God's merciful love. Love opened him up to the divine mystery at the heart of everything. He realized that the God of his life was the God of every life, and he called all creatures brother and sister. Each and everything, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, had infinite value because it reflected God in its own unique being. Earthworm in the middle of the road, bees freezing in winter. Francis attended to every creature with grace and respect. He called himself brother not as a title, but as a structure of reality. He lived in solidarity with all creation because his life was part of every other life. Bird, tree, rabbit, human, all were bound together in the compassionate love of God. Even at the end of his life, when he was blind and racked with disease, as expressed in the Canticle of Creatures, his inner world was light-filled. His life shows that when we live in the gift of God's merciful love, we discover the whole earth as pregnant with God. We discover the truth of ourselves as part of a cosmic family, and we live with a new reality of belonging together, bound in the heart of God's mercy. Sister Elia Delio from Earth, Community, and Mercy Consciousness.
Thank you. So now we move into the section that's called the group discussion. And for those of you who might be doing this individually, we do suggest that you also take a piece of paper and write in 3 pieces, A, B, and C. And then you can also follow with us as we are going to do this discussion. So we're going to be looking at the whole idea of love in action. Think about what you learned about St. Francis in the video as well as in the readings. How did St. Francis embody this idea that God is love and love is God? And one thing I need to make sure that when we say love is God, we are not defining God as love, but that loving, when we love, we start manifesting God's love through us. How do we then put that love into action? How do we manifest that God is love within us? How does the canticle itself embody this whole idea of God is love and love is God? And list the ways it does on a piece of paper and call it A. So basically think about how all the readings, the video, the canticle, show this whole idea of God is love, that we are called to love in order to manifest God. And how do we put it in action? And as I said, this is all individual at this time. The second reflection, Pope Francis and Pope Benedict speak of the concrete action of love. They both have those words in their readings. What examples can you share of how you and or your community display love in action? So this one is more of examples, concrete examples, and about how you and your community think about how your parish or your school or your family, how do you display love in action? That means putting love into action, manifesting God's love to the world. And that's your list B. Three, in Laudato Si, Pope Francis speaks of love as both civic and political. How do you and or your community act on the civic and political aspects of the love of God? Is there any of that happening? So you can list examples of love as a civic and political action on your list C. Okay, now we need to compare your lists A, B, and C. And anybody want to be the one that says to us what is listed in your lists and is something in all 3 of them? Or are all 3 very different? you sort of like just let us know what would be your list A, your list B, your list C, and what was the common thing in all three, or was there nothing in common? Yes, Beth.
So in A, some of my rough notes included family, farmers, giving to the poor, and environmental awareness. In B, I had respect for the earth and the land, food drives, care packages, simple actions, daily actions start with me. And then in C, I really had it focused on participation in community, and then I pieced that out a little bit with school, parish, volunteering, or voting. So I found that all three were a little different, but that there were threads between them. And if anything, in my list, I think the third one, C, was kind of where A and B happen.
That's good. Yep. Anyone else want to share their lists, and if there's anything in common between your lists? Or anybody have something very different than what Beth had?
Mine is actually quite similar in terms of the different levels. So for A, I understood it more as sort of me as an individual. How am I in the world? And or how is, you know, St. Francis in the world? And what are our individual actions? And then for B, it sort of grew into the interpersonal, and I really thought of it in terms of my community. For the Columbans, our charism is cross-cultural mission, and really one of the things that is central to that is the saying of, you know, you take off your shoes when you step onto someone else's ground, because the ground that you are on is holy. And really that is a way that I see putting love into action, of humbling yourself when you are meeting someone new, or you know, going outside of your comfort zone or something like that. And then the third one, very similar to Beth, as what, you know, even above that interpersonal level, how am I interacting in the political world, or you know, what is my responsibility? How should I be interacting at a community level? And the theme of caring for creation in my list went through all of those pieces, but I sort of understood them at 3 different levels.
Kent and Adam, do you have anything different, similar?
I mean, similar. I think the first one I thought more of like just different dispositions that St. Francis had, that he had a solidarity with nature and humanity, had a deep reverence for all of creation. He spent time with nature to foster that love. For the second piece, things that we do in my work and in just my own personal disposition, try to be a good listener. I try to help others as they're discerning major life decisions, and then try to accompany them. And those moments are really kind of they are the love in action, as best as I can describe that in a short amount of time and without being able to relate the experience in this setting. Civic and political action, doing some work with the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, participating in advocacy alerts that go out through the USCCB and other Catholic organizations, trying to build relationships with legislators in my home state, as well as empowering minority leadership as really the love and the dispositions. What's similar in all three for my answers were the ideas of like the dispositions of attentiveness, mercy, and compassion really being central to being able to live out being a loving person in the world and showing God's love in the world.
For me, it was the understanding of community and relationship. And I think at some point there was reference to, it began with God as love. And I think that oftentimes, whether it be within my order or within the work I do in the diocese, there needs to be a sense of community that's nurtured first. And at the point then when people can begin to appreciate what it means to be community at the many different levels, then and only then is there any sort of thought giving to how a community would respond. And I think it's less about display as it is instead about expressing genuine love of God through compassion for brothers and sisters or the created world.
Excellent. We sort of switched now. This is a prayer card, postcard, sometimes they call it, from the USCCB. And it is the Laudato Si 5th anniversary postcard. And it has in it, protect life, preserve that which sustains life, care for our common home. And in it, it says that as Catholics, we are called to uphold life and the dignity of each human person, support families and future generations, advocate for basic rights and a just economy, be in solidarity with all, care for all of God's creation. What we're going to discuss are these things that are in this card, were any of them on any of your lists, A, B, or C? Are they examples of love in action? Because a lot of folks will be like, oh, is care for creation an example of love in action? Is upholding life and the dignity of each human person the way that we manifest the love of God on earth? Are any of these things on your list? Protecting life, creation care, racial justice, feeding the hungry, welcome immigrants and refugees, caring for the sick, healing broken relationships, voting and legislative advocacy. Are those examples of love in action? And I'll have you discuss those things. And I guess maybe the way we can also think of it, a lot of folks, when they make these lists, they might have, I donate thing, I have a food pantry. But these lists go a little bit further, sort of push it a little bit more.
I'll show my age as it relates. It was a language. It was a term used for TV shows in the 80s and 90s, and it was called the crossover episode, where you would see a character from one show appear in another show, and it was always interesting to see that happen. The informative part about this is, because of the interrelatedness, there are moments where all of those listed under C where you begin to see the connection of it. If there is such a degradation of the created world that it actually begins to affect prenatal health of a developing child, you now have those moments of connectedness, and it helps to keep in mind the words of both Pope Francis and Saint Francis of God is love and relationship, to be able to help people appreciate those connectedness, those moments of crossover episode.
And how connected also, I mean, if we're looking at how we work on the issues of climate change, which has a racial justice component, a hunger component, a refugee component, a health component, a broken relationships when people believe in climate change and those that don't, and a very huge impact on legislation and our voting. So all of them are kind of like in one big branch. How many of you see voting and legislative advocacy as an love in action? Because I think that many folks in our parishes and their pews would not make that connection. Where do you stand on that one? How do you explain that if you have to? Becca, you work a lot on advocacy.
I can jump in.
No question on that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, so thank you. I do for sure understand voting and political participation as personally as part of my faith, but also in my work. We understand it as you have to both care for and address day-to-day needs of a community, and you also have to look at what's causing those day-to-day needs. And if you're not looking at those root causes, then you are only addressing symptoms. And so I understand, and this is really informed for me, when Pope Francis came to Washington, D.C. and addressed Congress. And if you haven't read that speech or watched the video of that, I would highly encourage it. And he talks about politics as being a way that we live in community with each other and how we decide to live in community with each other. And so, you know, if our faith is informing that, then we have, this is me speaking personally again, we have no choice but to be involved, and to make sure that that community reflects the values that our faith instills in us.
I'll just echo that a little bit. You know, I think learning through the organization and the congregation of sisters that I work for, it's about relationships, and part of your relationship is connection to your greater community, and whether that be civic or political, but you have a responsibility to participate. And within that, it's also a relationship of how well you know each other, and are you comfortable talking about issues that you might not agree about, but to be able to be comfortable in a relationship, friendship, family, to just have that conversation. And speaking personally right now, it's really trying to help individuals that I know understand the nexus of climate justice to all other injustices, and telling that story of what is happening with our brothers and sisters that are in very difficult times and forced migration. And I thought it was very fitting that the World Day of Immigration and Migration was within the season of creation. I mean, that St. Francis, brothers and sisters, we are here to care for each other and address each other as equals in a sense.
Adam, Kent?
I mean, for me, voting is a very reflective period because I know that the choices I make there have an effect on the common good. And so, yes, I think it is an act of love to be participating in voting or in legislative advocacy for causes that we believe in, because we have to be engaging even when the engagement is a challenge for our own growth or a challenge toward various faith tenets that we have.
The importance of being involved and aware of issues is not just a matter of once every 4 years, using your right to vote. It's an ongoing matter, and I think if we encourage people to be involved day to day, week to week, then I think that it becomes an easier process as we come closer to making those types of decisions. So that's what I find the challenge is, to encourage people to stay active and engaged even between the election days.
One of my favorite scriptures, and it's translated in different ways sometimes. It's the Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require? To do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. And how I see that is, in many times in our society, we seem to switch the verbs. We seem to love justice. We love the whole idea of justice. And we love doing mercy, the whole charity. And that in voting and in being active in advocacy, we're really then channeling the doing justice, which is the transformational type of work. That both are needed, but that we need to always say we need to be doing the justice by voting, by being active in our communities. So at this point, we go to what is called the action. And for this program, we really are focusing it on having people to go and vote. That is really the most important thing after the season of creation, after doing this program that says love in action, to take the action and to vote. And we do give a place for folks to go to pledge to vote, where to foster human dignity, promote the common good. So at this point, everybody is able to go to that pledge to vote to protect life, foster human dignity, and promote the common good. We also give you the idea of going to the Catholic bishops and looking at their document on forming consciences for faithful citizens, because that document will give you all of the background to be able to really decide how you vote. What are the issues that you need to be looking at, and how to use your own conscience to make that decision, to discern. To take the pledge, this is the link for folks to go and take the pledge. And it is a very simple pledge. It is a pledge to vote with love and action in mind, so as to protect life, respect human dignity, and promote the common good, including God's gift of creation. And it'll be up to each individual. There is no way any Catholic can be told who to vote for. They need to look at the issues as well as the candidates and decide themselves how to vote with that kind of a lens. And finally, we also ask that you share the pledge with friends and family. I think that that is a way to start the conversations with people. When you take the pledge, you will receive an automated email, which will include resources like the USCCB's resources, as well as a 2-pager on courageous conversations that will help you have discussions that might be a little difficult, because those discussions are exactly what St. Francis wants us to be doing, to be able to heal these kind of partisan moments. We're not going to go sing to the powers. We have to go and talk to them and be civil as we talk. And then the last thing is to share the postcard, the Laudato Si postcard. It's available in multiple downloadable forms. The reason we want folks to share it is because it really starts making the connections that as Catholics, we are not a single issue community, that we care about all of these issues that are affecting life, human dignity, and the common good. So we've come to the end of our session. Before we do the closing prayer, is there anything else that you might want to share with each other? I just want to thank you all for participating today. So thank you. I'm going to do this one a little bit different. Although it says all, I will be reading that section, and then all will be the last section, since we're doing it online and the audio issues become a little bit of a problem. So if you could please join me in the St. Francis and the Franciscan Benediction, which was a little adapted for those of you who are familiar with it. It's a little different. So join me in prayer. May God bless us with discomfort of easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that we may live from deep within our hearts. May God bless us with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of God's creation, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May God bless us with tears to shed for those who suffer illness, pain, rejection, injustice, hunger, and war, so that we may reach out our hands to comfort them and to turn their pain into joy. And may God bless us with just enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in the world, so that we can do what others claim cannot be done, to bring justice, kindness, and healing to all our children, all our neighbors who are poor, and all of creation. And the blessing who creates,
God, who creates, redeems, and sanctifies,
be upon us,
upon you,
and all
you love, and pray for this day and forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Paz.
Thank you.
Thank you.